Shalom, and welcome to the Parasha Pod. I'm Rav Mordechai Rosenberg, here with Rav Menashe and Leibtag, and we're talking Torah together.
Parasha Vayechi. Let's make it live.
Let's do it. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, it's time to learn. So, Rav Leibtag, this Parasha has a lot of blessings in it, a lot of nice moments, but there's one moment that has gotten on my nerves for years, and I have grappled with this particular challenge in many ways. I've turned it into Divrei Torah. I've asked different people, but I'm still not okay with it. And the question is, when Ya'akov comes to give a blessing to Menashe and Efraim, he seems to repeat the same mistake that has led to so much disaster, which is showing favoritism. Treating a younger child like the oldest child, giving them the favoritism of the firstborn, even when they're not the firstborn. That's what he did with Yosef. It led to hatred amongst his brothers. And he does it again. And Yosef sees what happens. He seems pretty upset about it. And Ya'akov sticks to his guns. Now, it turns out it's not quite so bad because Menashe and Efraim
They get along, sort of.
They get along. But it doesn't seem to be any credit to Ya'akov. He seems to just be making things worse. I mean, why hasn't he learned from his mistake? And why is he seeming to repeat it?
So it goes back to your first question, what's blessing all about? If I'm the father and I see a potential in a younger brother has more potential of leadership than the older brother, and I want to make sure each son fulfills their potential, so bless them. A blessing doesn't make the person who he is. A blessing doesn't determine history. A blessing doesn't help shape history, because the way I view blessing of a father to a son, I'll take an analogy from high school. At least in America, a lot of high schools, you have what's called a guidance counselor in high school. And their job is to guide the students what profession to pursue, where to go to college, what to major in, etc. Now, what do they base those decisions on? They know the students' grades. They probably met the student during high school. They talk to the students' teachers. They know the job market. They know the universities. And based on all those things, they say, you should be a doctor, you should be a lawyer, you should be a teacher. That's a curse, maybe. No, you see what potential the student has, and based on the student's potential, based on what universities are out there, how the job market is, you have the potential, you can fulfill your life to the most by going in this direction. Now, sometimes you see a weakness in a person, and beware of that weakness. But the classic one, we call them blessings, but Shimon and Levi seem to be cursed, remember?
Yeah.
He doesn't curse the sons, he curses their anger.
Right. Curses their anger.
Yeah, beware of your anger and fix it. And Levi fixes it. But what's really amazing, later there's a story in Chumash where, in Sefer Bamidbar, where there's a Isha, there's someone with the story of the Baal Peor, the Nasi of Shimon, remember, is killed by Pinchas from Shevet Levi.
Right.
So he takes that anger. The Mamish says anger, he's full of anger, but someone from Levi in the name of God uses that anger and kills someone from Shimon who's doing something terrible.
Right.
Yeah. So you can take your quality of anger sometimes and use it in a good way, or you have to control and make sure not to use it in a bad way. So when you give a blessing, it's recognizing potential. Will it happen? You can fulfill that. God, Yaakov isn't telling Yehuda, you're going to be a leader no matter what. You have the potential of leadership. Lo yasor shevet miYehuda means the ability to lead will always be in Yehuda. If you live up to it, fine, but you can lose it. Leaders of Yehuda, a lot of people lost their kingdom.
Right.
So if the father sees a certain potential in Ephraim over Menashe, that's not a mistake. Now, the mistake was when people see someone with extra potential, being jealous of them only because of their potential, and not, the idea is everyone should fulfill their potential. So if the blessings are about guidance and about how to fulfill your responsibility as a member of the nation, you can do this job the best. We talked about the same thing with Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov wants the Bechorah because he can do a better job. Esav doesn't want that responsibility. It's not about privilege, it's about responsibility. So when he gives an extra blessing to Ephraim, he's not giving him extra privileges, he's giving him extra responsibility because he thinks that son has the ability to fulfill that responsibility. Now,
hold on a second. So you're saying that in the same way that the brothers that Menashe and Efraim, they're getting like a guidance counselor. Their blessing isn't to
determine, but to guide.
Right. It's not actually a gift per se. It's a recommendation about how they can fulfill their potential. So you're saying that for the same reason, the Yosef's brothers were mistaken when they sort of misinterpreted Yaakov's treatment of Yosef, because he was also just showing potential.
Everyone's to blame, because Yosef thought he was the only one, and his dream it sounded like that. Mm-hmm. And remember we had the whole thing, who's the only one, and God wants everyone to be around.
Right.
But Yosef has the ability of leadership. But when leadership becomes a privilege instead of responsibility, then it's misused.
Right.
So that leadership shouldn't lead to haughtiness. If you're wearing that special coat, you should be, I expect more from you because you're chosen. Right. Which is an underlying theme to Am Yisrael being chosen. Now, if you follow, the Bechor is never who's ever born first in Sefer Bereshit. Who's ever born first pretty much loses that leadership, and leadership goes usually by merit, by someone who's more worthy of it. And this whole idea of Bechorah, which is a big theme through Bereshit. In the beginning of Sefer Shmot, when God sends Moshe Rabbeinu, leaving Midian, go to Pharaoh, tell him, B'ni Bechori Yisrael. In the beginning of chapter 4, middle of chapter 4, go tell him, my firstborn child, Israel. Right. We're not the firstborn nation. Mm-hmm. There's many nations, but God is giving us the responsibility of leadership among nations, to be a blessing to other nations. You can bring blessing to other nations by being that model nation that other nations can learn from. So Bechorah is responsibility, not privilege. Now, to fulfill that responsibility, you might have a double portion. That's something else. But that's in order to fulfill that responsibility.
Mm-hmm. So hold on. Speaking of double portion, it seems like there's something going on a little bit with a double portion, with the very choosing of Menashe and Efraim here. Yosef is one of the tribes, but he seems to be getting split into two tribes here. Is that simply like him getting treated like the eldest child, and therefore he gets a double portion? But if that is the case, then how is this a double portion? Isn't it just simply like splitting him in two? Like, what's going on there?
So in the word, if you follow the wording, this sort of a beautiful closure for Sefer Bereshit. Because what's the first thing Yosef tells Ephraim, what's the first thing Yaakov tells Yosef? Mm-hmm. Vayechi Ya'akov in Pasuk Gimel in Perek Memchet in verse 3. Vayechi Ya'akov Yosef El Shaddai Nirai Lai Beluz Beretz Canaan V'Barach Oti. We take that pasuk for granted, but El Shaddai in Sefer Bereshit is very special.
So El Shaddai appeared to me in Luz, in the land of Canaan, and blessed me. And then he's going to say,
I promise to make you multiply. You'll be a leader to many nations, and I'm giving you this land for your offspring, etc. And now your two sons, even though they're born in the land of Egypt, they belong to me. And Ephraim and Menashe are just as legit as Reuven and Shimon. Now, as I was saying, they're included in the nation. I might think because they were born in Egypt, because they were born to the daughter of a remember his father-in-law was a priest, was a Kohen On. Mm-hmm. So maybe his children shouldn't be included. Maybe Yosef should marry someone else now, someone Jewish maybe, maybe one of his nieces or something, and have a proper child kind of idea. No, Ephraim and Menashe, even though they were born in Egypt, but to the daughter of an Egyptian, type of priest, etc., they're just as legit as Reuven and Shimon.
Right.
Yeah. Now, it might be all saying they're like two tribes because they do get a double portion, and that happens in reality because Yosef has earned the Bechorah. He's not the firstborn son; he's the firstborn son of Rachel. He's also taken leadership. He's proved himself. But I think the main thing is, even though they're born in the land of Egypt, they're still included. But the blessing he gives them with El Shaddai is interesting because listen what he'll tell later on. When he takes Ephraim and Menashe, what you mentioned, so it's switching the hands. In Pasuk Tedvav, Vayivarech et Yosef Vayomer, Ha'Elohim asher hitalchu avotai lefanav Avram v'Yitzchak, Ha'Elohim hareh oti mi'odi b'ad ha'yom hazeh, ha'malach ha'ga'oti, the rest we know by heart. That introduction, he blesses them in the name of God, the God who my ancestors, Avraham and Yitzchak, hitalchu lefanav. Remember where that comes from?
Right.
Where was that?
That's go to Avraham.
In Perek Yud Zayin, the introduction to Brit Milah, the covenant between God, B'Shem Elokim, between God and His people. Remember the covenant is, I'll be your God, you be my people. The reminder of the covenant, the Od Brit, will be circumcision. But the first time God describes himself, Ani El Shaddai, in the beginning of chapter 17, is followed by Hitalech Lefanai V'yatamim. You walk with me. You lead the way. You're going to represent me. You walk. My presence should be felt among you, and the way you act, the way you walk in front of me. You lead the way. That behavior is what makes us worthy of becoming God's people. So he's bringing right away Menashe and Ephraim's blessing into the framework of the purpose of our chosenness. Not that you're chosen, but why you're chosen. Right. And therefore, to fulfill your potential, you have to walk with God.
Okay, so I'm hearing, I think, three things going on with Menashe and Ephraim. Number one is there is an aspect of Yosef being the firstborn and getting a double inheritance. Number two is that the main point here, though, is including Menashe and Ephraim, even though they're born in exile and born to, Yosef's Egyptian wife, that nonetheless they're still part of the family. And number three is including them in the mission of the Jewish people, and the same sort of mission given to Avraham of Hitalech Lefanai, walk with me. They are also being given right now. Sort of as you're included in the people, you also get the mission of the people. Now,
in the blessing when God blessed Ya'akov and Beitel, which is Luz, etc., when he comes back from Beitel, back in Perak Lamed Hey, in Pasuk Tet, when God appeared to him, he tells him, Ani El Shaddai. He changes Yaakov's name to Israel, gives him the same blessing, Ani El Shaddai, pray urvei, kal goy ukal goyim yemimeka, umelachim echetza yitzeu. That's kingdom, that's leadership. That's the blessing. In order to fulfill your potential, to be a nation representing God, I need nationhood, I need leadership. And therefore his hope is that blessing in the name of El Shaddai, who's been guiding this choosing process, who's in and who's out, from the beginning of Bereshit has been determined with God's name El Shaddai. The decision that only Yitzchak and not Yishmael, that was El Shaddai. The decision only the child of Sarah and not Hagar, that was El Shaddai. The name change, Abram to Abraham, always El Shaddai. The Yitzchak choosing Yaakov finally over Esav, remember, on his way out, the El Shaddai Yivrechot Chapitin Birkat Abraham. Yitzchak isn't deciding it's Yaakov. Yitzchak is blessing Yaakov after that whole incident, that El Shaddai should bless him, that he should get the blessing of Abraham. Indeed, that's what God does in two stages. First, when he leaves in Beitel, and then when he returns after the fight with the Malach, etc., after he graduates Lebanon University and wins the match with the Sar Esav, once he becomes a man. But now we become Yisrael, and now at this point the choosing process is over, with God, with El Shaddai changing Yaakov's name to Yisrael. From now on, everyone's in, no matter how good or bad they are. We're all chosen. Now I go to blessings. Now that I have a team, as up until now, it's only been one child chosen, just Yitzchak, just Yaakov. Now everyone's chosen. Remember, even the children of the maidservants. We talked about that. And now you need blessings. Now that we have a team, everyone needs a job.
Right.
And everyone's job is based on their potential, but everyone has a job to do. And now you can live up to your potential. You can lose your potential. Some tribes make it, sometimes less. Shimon doesn't come to much, and Levi excels. They move into education. They become leaders as well.
Right. Interesting. So I'm reminded of what you said regarding the brachot that were Yaakov and Esav were competing over. That you're saying that you said there that the whole point of those blessings was Yitzchak expected that both Yaakov and Esav would be chosen,
and they'd have to share that leadership,
and they would have to share it somehow. So he was like trying to appoint, sort of, so to speak, a captain of the team, and that was a
mistake he made, because there wasn't a team yet. We're still in the embryo process of who's going to become the nation.
Right.
We're still at the seed level.
Right.
Only once we become a nation, we have a team, then we can start giving out jobs.
Right. And so now that we have a team, so now we are.
That's why the blessing that Yitzchak wanted to give Esav, leading the nation, is split now between Yosef and Yehuda. Havik Lachecha goes to Yehuda. Yavdu Rov Dagam V'Tirosh goes to Yosef.
I see.
Now the idea is, now you need leadership, but leadership can also be shared.
Nice.
You can have a president and a prime minister. You can have the idea in government. It's not healthy that you need a leader, but a leader who is working on behalf of everyone who knows how to share his leadership.
Nice. So hold on, just backtracking to this idea of the El Shaddai being a marker of the choosing process. So can you just sharpen for me? We have El Shaddai at the beginning of the process where Avraham is chosen, and then with Yitzchak and Ya'akov.
That Avraham is chosen, number one, he gets a name change from Avraham to Avraham. He's given a mission of Hitalech Lefanav Yatamim, and he's told he's going to be an Av Hamon Goyim.
Right.
Now, that statement, that's the reason for his name change. Abraham, ki Av Hamon Goyim Netaticha. I'm giving you the responsibility to be an Av, a father to many nations. Now, that can be understood as a blessing. You get to be the father of many nations, not just Israel, also Amalek and Esav and Avishmael, etc., which doesn't make much sense in a sense. I think Av Hamon Goyim means you'll be a mentor to many nations. And the best example is what Yosef tells his brothers. Go tell Daddy, go tell Yaakov, I'm an Av to Paro. Remember, by Semeni Av to Paro, he made me a mentor to Pharaoh. An Av, many times, like there's the father of modern medicine, those three sons of Lemech in the end of Perek Daled. One was the father of all metalwork. One was the father of all music. One was the father, remember, of this and of that. So Brit Milah is about a covenant that I'm your God, you're my people. I'm choosing you for that purpose to be a nation serving me forever. And I want you in a leadership position above nations, not to be the only nation. I care about all humankind, all civilization. You need to be the model nation they're going to learn from. You'll be an Av, a mentor for people to learn from. People, just like Pharaoh looked up to Yosef for guidance, we want other nations to look up to Am Yisrael for guidance. Nice. That's Isaiah chapter 2 in a nutshell.
All right. So this El Shaddai is present at the time when Am Yisrael is chosen in order to have their unique mission to serve the rest of the
and
nations.
It's a special name, just in Sefer Bereshit. It comes up later in Sefer Yov for technical, that's all class in Yov. But in Bereshit, it's unique to Bereshit. Yitzchak uses that name to bless him that Yaakov should be chosen.
Right.
The exclusion of Esav. God uses that name when he changes Yaakov's name to Yisrael. Yaakov uses that name when it deals with the continuing who's being chosen within the family.
And so the role of this use of invoking this name of Hashem right now when mentioning Menashe and Efraim, why are we using that for Menashe and Efraim? If all the brothers before
we're concluding the Bechira process because we're getting the final form. We know everyone's chosen, even Yosef, even his kids who were born in Egypt.
So you're saying like Menashe and Efraim are symbolic of all the children of the Shvatim to show that all the children of the Shvatim are also chosen and also all their children, and then everybody in the family is now
chosen together with Hitalech, but following tradition of Hitalech of Navi Atamim, Avotai Asher Itachu, the people walked with God. Remember, Chanach walked with God. Remember that was back in Bereshit. That's the theme all through Bereshit.
Right.
Because it's not just being chosen; it's why you're chosen, and that's going to be the underlying theme behind all these stories in Bereshit. And if certain Shvatim have more potential than others, use your potential. That's the blessing of members being a blessing.
Right.
So with the father in his old age knows the children, knows their potential, and he wants to give them guidance to go in the right direction. What will be, that's up to them.
Right. Okay. So the father is seeing his children. He's old. He's seeing his children in their potential. He wants to give them that guidance. Great. Thank you. So next, I've got another question, which is, okay, so Yaakov clearly feels like he knows his children pretty well and his grandchildren enough to give them these blessings, but it seems that the relationships aren't maybe as strong as we thought. We see that Yaakov, when he goes to ask Yosef to bury him in Eretz Yisrael when he dies, he doesn't just ask him. He doesn't say, "Listen, I'm dying. I really want you to bury me in Eretz Yisrael." He has to. He says that, and then he makes him make an oath, swears.
Sounds like he doesn't trust them.
Exactly. It sounds like there's something that he's holding back. There's some sort of barrier in their relationship. Also, when Yaakov is sick, he's told, Yosef is told, "Oh, your father's sick." Like, wait, he doesn't go and visit his dad, and he doesn't know his father's sick and dying. Like, and there's also another relationship that appears to be souring, which is towards the end of the Parasha, which is that the relationship between Yosef and Paro seems to have taken a turn south, because when Yaakov does pass away, Yosef has to kind of send to Pharaoh.
It protects you. It takes to have some old friends in the government. Maybe they could talk to the old boss.
Yeah, he doesn't even ask Pharaoh directly. Like, it seems like Yosef is maybe a bit out of favor with Pharaoh as well. Like, what's happened to Yosef's relationships? You know?
So one thing, before we get to that answer, something I remembered from way back. In the beginning of Parasha Vayechi, what's it say? You know, he's living there. As Yaakov's getting old, it says, he calls Yosef, come to me. Then, Yaakov needs something. He has to invite his son to come visit. And he gives him and makes him swear that there he meets mine. In the next story, Avraham and Yosef, ויקח את שני בניו עמו, את צלם מנשה אפרים, ויגד ליעקב, ויאמר, הנה בנך יוסף בא אליך. ויתחזק ישראל, וישב על המיטה. What gave Yaakov chizuk? They came on their own volition. Okay? In other words, he didn't have to call them to come. He's so happy now because Yosef comes to visit his father. Okay? But what gives Yaakov strength to bless him? The fact that he didn't have to call him this time. You know what I'm saying? Yosef on his own makes his own decision. Let's go. I heard daddy's not well. Let's go visit him and bring the kids along to give them to make the. It's such a real true life story. When someone's old and you know and aging, for children to visit and bring grandchildren to visit. There's nothing that makes old people happier. We should be zocher.
Very nice.
Things like that. So that Vayitchazek Yisrael, that pasuk is so important. What do you mean you know that for?
So hold on a second. Just let me clarify.
Strength.
So
that gives Yaakov strength.
So the first time when Yaakov wants to be assured he's going to get buried in Israel, then he has to send for Yosef.
He has to call for him. And beg, sort of beg my son to do me a favor.
Right.
He's got to beg his son to do me a favor.
Right. But when he's sick, then he hasn't called for Yosef. Yosef was just told the father's sick, and then Yosef goes to visit.
And that helped Yaakov recover. It gives him the strength to bless.
Right.
To bless the sons,
even though he's sick and he's in bed, etc. Okay.
And then he gives the whole spiel,
nice.
Your double portion. Now, as far as now, get to your real question, the burial part. First of all, why Yosef? So I can bring the reason why Daf Yosef, because Yosef has the power to get things done.
Right.
Why not Yosef? Because if you're where's Yaakov? Yaakov doesn't only want to be buried in Eretz Canaan. He wants to be buried where?
In the Marat HaMachpelah.
And who else is buried there?
Leah.
And who's not buried there?
Rachel.
Oh, that's a big deal, right?
Right.
So of all sons, and for sure the other ones who do it, well, Yosef agreed to that. So in his opening speech, he has to explain why I really didn't want to, but I had to. Remember, that's the stuff. We were traveling. It was hard, and it was a long distance. I wasn't able to bury her there. I had to bury her on the road. He has to explain beforehand why it was necessary for me to bury her on the road. So that shouldn't be a reason not to bury Yaakov and Marat HaMachpelah. That's a soft issue. So again, I could say he's making Yosef swear because he's doubting he might not want to fulfill his request completely. He might prefer to bury her next to Keber Rachel instead of Marat HaMachpelah.
Right.
Or on the positive side, he has the ability to do it.
Right.
Now, but why swear? Let's go back to the bigger issue. We've seen all through the story of Yosef in Egypt. In the eyes of the Egyptians, Canaan is a disgusting country.
Yeah.
Remember, people in Egypt don't sit at the same table with those people from Canaan, and they're at Son. It's a toiva in Egyptian within Hebrew. To be a shepherd, that whole lifestyle, and we'll see later on in the burial, the Egyptian army, the entourage that follows him, doesn't step foot in Eretz Canaan. They wait outside in Iver Yarden and Goren Hatad, wherever that is, and only Yaakov and his family go to Eretz Canaan and bury him. Read there carefully. They don't go to Canaan. They don't step foot in Canaan. Now, it sounds like, go talk to Pharaoh. I think Yosef has things planned out much better. There's a bigger problem, and we see later on with Yosef's own burial. Because it's so disgusting, the land of Canaan, it would not be proper for an Egyptian official to be buried in Canaan. Now, don't tell me you don't realize that burial in Egypt is important. In fact, death is more important than life in Egypt, especially for the aristocracy.
Right.
Important people, what they did with all those pyramids and all those burial spots, that's proven. Right? Burial in Egypt is important. The whole idea of making mummies and wool, and because they live for Olam Haba, basically, they take it really seriously. And burial in Egypt is the biggest kavod. for a big Egyptian official to be buried outside of Egypt, that would be terrible. On the other hand, there's great respect for making an oath back then. Even up until recently, you would go to court, you have to swear on the Bible in the name of God. You swear to tell the whole truth and the whole truth. Oaths are make a big deal. We see with the Gibonim, an oath is a big deal. And it's not that Yosef is not trusted by his father. Yaakov doesn't make Yosef swear because he doesn't trust Yosef. Yaakov makes Yosef swear, so Yosef has an excuse to Pharaoh. The what?
Right.
Listen, I would love to, I should bury him, but listen, I can't, I'm stuck. I'm in a dilemma. If it was up to me, for sure, I'd bury him in Egypt. Because I'll be buried in Egypt. Yeah. Yosef doesn't dare to ask that he can be buried in Egypt. Remember? He can be. Yosef himself isn't buried in Canaan. He can ask to be transported to Canaan. He's a big Egyptian official.
Right. It's a bit like what Rashi says, right?
Yeah. But he says, when you leave here,
yeah,
you'll take my bones with me. But he needs an excuse to Pharaoh for why, right? So now I need to cover my bases now because I'm an Egyptian official. So what does he do? I don't think he lost his context anymore. He has it all planned out. First, he has his father make him swear. Okay, I have to swear, and then he has Pharaoh's advisors, his other friends, say, you know what, Pharaoh, Yosef, our good buddy Yosef, the guy who made your country so rich, he's really down because he's in a dilemma, right? He really wants to bury his father in Canaan. We know it's not right. Do him a favor. They're doing it. It's embarrassing for Yosef to ask for it. He's getting his friends to ask Pharaoh to do him a favor because of this dilemma where to bury daddy.
Interesting. So Yosef doesn't...
I don't think he goes down about it. What's my proof? Because when they decide to bury him in Egypt, a whole entourage goes with him. The whole Egyptian army.
When they bury
Yaakov.
Ya'akov and Pharaoh.
When they bury Yaakov, if Yosef's standing in Egypt has gone down, that doesn't make sense that the whole nation mourns Yaakov's death.
Right.
And that the whole Egyptian army follows him. And we have this whole Goren Atad. This is an amazing funeral. This is a state funeral to the nth degree, even though it's in Canaan. So how do they solve the problem? I think Yosef's position is still strong. I think it's part of Yosef's bargaining or planning, because he's a master planner. He's got everything planned out ahead of time. He's planning, I know I'm going to have a problem. I'll have this dilemma. How to get around it? My father made me swear. It's not my idea. My friends come and ask for him. And what's Pharaoh say? Go bury your father, like he made you swear.
Right.
Go bury your father like he made you swear.
Interesting.
And that's the official excuse, how we could allow something like that to happen.
So Yosef, on the contrary, he's not out of credit with Paro. In fact, he's retaining his credit with Paro because he doesn't even use up the credit to make the requests to go up to Eretz Yisrael. He instead
asks his friends to, give me a little, let's do something for our leader. Let's do him a favor because he's torn between his values. Right. Yosef for sure does, but listen, Yaakov, he's torn between his father made him swear. So let's do him a favor and let him bury his father in Egypt. But they make a big deal about it.
Right.
But on the other hand, the Egyptian entourage doesn't step foot in Canaan. Only the time he goes to Canaan. And remember, they don't come back. Did we talk about that last week, didn't we? Why they don't come back?
Yeah, but I feel even worse about it in this parasha. Like in last week's parasha, we said, why didn't they go back as soon as the famine ended? But here they're back. Like I see this moment.
But we don't, because God said you don't come back until I tell you to come back. Listen, in this week's parsha, Yaakov's last words to Yosef. In Yaakov's last words to Yosef.
Yeah. In
Perek Memchet Pasuk Mem Aleph. Vayomer Yisrael Yosef, Hinei Anochi Met, Vaya Elohim Imachem again.
Yeah.
Ve'shiv etchem eretz avotechem. There's no shibud. There's no enslavement. Nothing stopping them. But God will be with you, and He'll bring you back. We have to wait until God brings us back, because God told him, I'll go down with you. I'll bring you back up. And we had that last week on his way down in Beersheba. God told him, you become a nation there. I'll be with you. I'll tell you when to come back. And listen to Yosef's last words to his family. He quotes the same thing.
Right.
In Pasuk Chavdaled, Vayomer Yosef alachav anochi met ve'Elohim pakod yifkod etchem ve'ela etchem min haaretz hazot eretz asher nishba labotam tzvek leYaakov. God will remember you and bring you back.
Yeah.
Okay? And he says, and when that happens, he says, pakod yifkod etchem, and then bring my bones with you.
Right.
And that's mentioned when we leave Egypt in Parasha Bashalach. We take God's boat Yosef with us, which is very symbolic when we leave Egypt. But we have to wait for God to tell us. And the burning bush, it says exactly, God tells Moshe to tell the elders of Israel, I remember what happened, and now it's time to bring you back. We have to wait for God to tell us it's time to come back.
Right.
And that's why we stay.
Mm-hmm.
Are we happy we're staying? I'm not saying we're not happy, we didn't settle down there, that's for sure. We'll deal with that next week. We know what causes the shibud, the enslavement to begin, and who's to blame for it. That's a whole long story.
Right.
But they're in Egypt because their life is good in Egypt, but maybe a bit too good. But that's not why they're not going back. They're not going back because God doesn't let them go back. And they have a Masorah from Ya'akov to Yosef, from Yosef to his brothers. We're here until God calls us to come back. And Moshe is aware of that because when God tells him time to come back, I'm going to come. They're going to ask me, what's your name? I need a proof, etc. But there's a Masorah, there's a tradition. We have to wait to become a nation, and we wait for God to tell us when to come back. Some people machmir that nowadays with my shlishi, but that's
exactly. So that was going to be my last question. I mean, what would you say to somebody that says, "Oh, well, maybe we should be waiting for a Navi to come and tell us, oh, it's time to go back to Eretz Yisrael, and until we until we hear a prophet or Mashiach coming to tell us it's time to go back to Eretz Yisrael, then we should just stay put and wait for somebody to come and tell us, Bakod Yufkod Elokim Etchem."
So we talked about that in davening today. In V'urachum, Monday and Thursday, we say, there's a prayer we go from Daniel, and we ask for an oath, right? Give us an oath, give us an oath to bring us back from the nations. Mm-hmm. Give us a sign. Now, how does God bring you back? That's a question of hashkafa. Do I wait for a magic carpet, or do I wait for the Cyrus Declaration? Is the Cyrus Declaration a sign that God's bringing you back? That's what some people thought in Vayechi, others didn't agree with that. Is the Balfour Declaration, was that a God telling us a sign it's time to come back? Mm-hmm. How does God tell you it's time to come home?
Right. That's
hashkafa. No, that's not. That's a class for Bnei Kiva, but for thing. But I totally understand. And a position says we have to wait for God to bring us back.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, we're back. Unfortunately, we're back. And most people came to Israel. If I go to anyone living in Israel today, and check how long ago did someone in his family make Aliyah, it's either grandparents or great grandparents. Mm-hmm. Right? There are very few people in Israel whose great-great-grandparents lived in Israel.
Right.
Most people, their grandparents or great-grandparents made Aliyah. Mm-hmm. And of those people who made Aliyah over the last 100 years, I say probably 90% of them came here because there was nowhere else to go. Mm-hmm. They didn't come because life was good or anything. There was nowhere else for them to go to.
Right.
Or they were expelled from their lands. And God brought us back. And those who didn't come back, they had the terrible fate. But that's a different discussion. But now, is that God talking to you? Okay, in my opinion, that is. Right. But I totally understand someone who says it's not.
Okay.
I would agree with them, but I can appreciate if they're coming, if they're doing it not out of weakness, but out of honesty. They really think that this isn't the way Gula should be. I totally understand that. Mm-hmm. So I can do what I believe in and what I follow, but I don't see someone disagrees with my hashkafa and my understanding. I can appreciate them and respect them and work with them and still daven and say minyan. Mm-hmm. I might not vote for their party, but I can daven with them at least. Amen.
Well, let's all work on being able to daven together and getting along together.
And God should give us a greater sign and give us and make the magic carpet a little more
smoother,
more of an easy flight.
Yeah, B'ezrat Hashem, and may we experience the ultimate redemption with all of us returning to Eretz Yisrael. Thank you very much.
We're going to begin Gula next week with Sefer Shemot and hopefully b'yamim ha'im b'zman hazeh.
Amen. Beautiful. Thank you very much. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. Shabbat Shalom.